Hey, I'm James from Smoking Dad Barbecue, and a couple years ago I developed the double indirect setup method for the Kamado Joe. But since then, I've come up with a couple variations because the original one that I developed didn't work with my older Kamado Joe Big Joe Series 1. The same was true for Classic Series 1 and Series 2. And since then, there's been a whole bunch of different variations. But which of these actually performs best? And that is what we're about to find out.
I would say the biggest difference to me, it was just better than that one.
So let's start with what we already know, locked in the vault as our foundation versus what we don't know and we're trying to confirm today. So first thing, hotter and faster. This is absolutely proven itself time and time again in terms of being the absolute best thing. One of the pet peeves that I had when I started before YouTube was even a thing and I was grilling on a green egg nearly 15 years ago, there was a lack of resources. And so when I would watch or read articles more like it at the time, and they say, 225 degrees Fahrenheit, this is a great temperature for ribs or brisket. Not only is 225 sometimes difficult to achieve, especially below that for overnight cooks, in a Kamado style grill, I would learn the hard way. This just doesn't taste as good as fires that we're able to do at a hotter fire. And so in my experimentation with low and slow versus hot and fast, I was blown away at the incremental taste and time benefits of cooking at hotter and faster temperatures. But this introduced a major problem. Anything that is exposed to heat directly coming underneath of it for a long time can be subject to burn. So even though the brisket might taste better, we run the risk of turning the bottom into leather. And so this is what inspired the double indirect method version 1. And so back at the time I was using a Kamado Joe Classic Series 3. And so the way that I did that by installing the SloRoller, the heat deflector plates above them, and then my cooking grids. And this was able to remove some of that energy coming up and burning the bottom of my brisket. And that was a game changer breakthrough for me at the time and something that I used for a long time until enter the scene, I went and bought myself a Series 1. And the reason I bought that for myself is because so many of you don't always have the latest and greatest model. And so I did a whole bunch of head-to-head comparisons between Series 1 and Series 3. And much to my surprise, despite the price differences, and not to say there are not benefits, you're getting an airlift hinge and a gasket and a 3-tier rack, but in a blind taste test, does that show up in a result that you can absolutely taste? At least for my taste buds and everybody that I invited over, it was neck and neck. So if you are on the fence and saying, I can't quite afford stepping up to the high-end model, you shouldn't turn your nose up at a deal on a Series 1, Series 2. They can turn out amazing food. But it was my purchase of a Series 1 Big Joe where I had to adapt my double indirect method. And so the first version that I did with that, and I've shown a couple times, and oh, by the way, I'll mention them in this video, but if you want sort of a summary of all these learnings, I have put together a double indirect guide. I'll put a link down to it below. It has all the setups for Series 1, 2, and 3, Classic, Big Joe, as well as the Joe Jr., along with some of the pros and cons and learnings. And this represents my collective experience and learning on what I would do today if I was setting up double indirect, including some of the topics that we'll cover. And that is a great way to say thanks and support the channel, as well as 100% of those proceeds come to me. Not obligated to do that, but very much appreciate if you check out any of those digital downloads. But one of the things that I discovered in my double indirect setup for a Series 1 is we have to do a couple wonky things. So first, for it to work with the SloRoller, you need the Kamado Joe charcoal basket so we can set the deflector plates on the tabs. Once your grill is running and hot, this can be a little bit precarious in terms of getting them to balance just right. And then we can place the SloRoller on top, which gives us about a 1/2 inch clearance all the way around for the heat to come up, then enter the SloRoller and come up into our grill. So does it work? Yes, absolutely. Is it complicated? Yes, absolutely. If you have a SloRoller, by all means, go and give it a try. But if you don't yet have a SloRoller, I might encourage you to jump to my version 3. And this was developed on the spirit of simplicity. Part of the goal of the channel is to give you consistent, repeatable results that are easy. And I can't help but contrast an experience where if I go and cook on something like my offset smoker where I add a couple sticks, it's almost like a vacation. It just feels so easy and intuitive, just adding some wood to the fire. It's a really enjoyable experience. We start fussing with the deflector plates on the charcoal basket and some of them fall in and you're running with a hot fire and trying to get the SloRoller balance. It further exasperates one of the main challenges of Kamado cooking, which is we've got our fire and a whole bunch of deflectors, grids, and baffles and all these things between our food. And this setup, perhaps more than any other that I've tested, brings that to life in the most clear fashion. So my version 3 was developed for a few reasons. One, cost and simplicity. And so the way that you can do this, and it works on Series 1, 2, and 3. This one is the only universal setup, and that is using either spare deflector stones or a pizza stone. And so by placing your deflectors on the bottom ring, we no longer need to go and buy the charcoal basket and try and land directly on those tabs. We can use the divide and conquer lower level exactly as intended, use the X accessory ring, drop in your deflectors or a pizza stone, and then add a drip pan if you want your cooking grids and get cooking. And this works on all 3 generations and all models, Classic and Big Joe. I've tested it on them all. And so not only is this much easier to install, and it's also much less expensive to buy a pizza stone than it is the SloRoller. You get the added benefit, if you don't already own a pizza stone, that you're able to use that for pizzas as well. So this has quickly become my favorite method of setting up, and I have not gone back in well over a year now of using my very first original double indirect setup. And so today, that's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna do version 1, which only works on Series 3 grills, which is the SloRoller for its marketed benefit of 20 times more air circulation, along with my double indirect plates above it, because I can get away with that in the Series 3 versus the oldest offering in the Kamado Joe lineup, the Big Joe Series 1 with a pizza stone added, to see if there's actually some discernible benefits of a SloRoller double indirect setup versus the pizza stone double indirect setup. Let's find out. With any of these head-to-heads, we want to reduce as many variables as possible. And normally, I'm a big fan of making my own seasoning, but today, James is smoking a ton of pork. We've signed up to help feed 400 people after a church service, and so I'm going to use all the capacity that I have. For the first time, I'm going to be loading up my Smoke North Echo reverse flow offset full with 12 shoulders. I maybe could fit a few more on the top rack, but I wanted to save a couple for today's experience. So I'm going to put 4 in my Big Joe Series 3, as well as 4 in my Big Joe Series 1, so that we can do a bit of this head-to-head. That's also going to adjust my seasoning plan. As I mentioned, I love making my own seasoning, but I'm going to use the Heath Riles Competition Rub Blend. I love the taste on this, and when I was competing at Memphis in May earlier this year against Heath, I was really pleased that when I was able to talk to him and taste his ribs from the practice day, how close they taste to my own seasoning profile. So that let me know we are on the right path with what we're doing from a seasoning perspective. But to save some time and energy and get everything on the grill quickly, I'm going to opt for simplicity here. Get all 20 shoulders out of the refrigerator, cut open the package, give them some seasoning on the inside, outside, truss them up so they cook nice and even, and then we can start dividing and conquering in terms of getting them onto our smokers. In terms of the setup, something that I didn't tell you 3 years ago, but I'm doing now on every low and slow cook, this is making a world of difference. I did a poll on Instagram recently, asked if you had a chance to try it and do the algorithm. Maybe it's not shared that video with you, but we've had yet another breakthrough this year in terms of getting the best smoke results in a Kamado grill. Let me tell you about it. So this, if you don't know what this is a pellet tube smoker, and it cost me $14 for a larger one at my local grill store. And normally, full disclosure, I am not a fan of pellets or pellet tube smokers. This is something that many people with a pellet grill are using to add supplemental smoke, and I can affirm firsthand experience, you just don't get comparable smoke to what I'm able to achieve on a Kamado grill, let alone an offset. And so absolutely, they need the supplemental smoke. When we are running with real vents and a real fire, and we don't have the assistance of a fan and a computer controller doing everything, if you add something like a pellet tube smoker while you're cooking, the smoke will consume all the space, all the oxygen, fire out, and end of story. So this, not a good idea for adding during your cook. But before your cook, this can make a world of difference. And when my friend Al from Eat More Vegans was visiting and talking to Cooper from Bar A Barbecue, they are just one of many places that are experimenting with this notion of cold smoking their food before they hot smoke it. And this, ever since I've tried it going back, what if a Texas barbecue joint cooked on a Kamado grill for their food service. Some of the techniques and tips that they use for their food service that nobody else is doing on a Kamado style grill. And it was a game changer, an absolute winner. And that was my first time doing 6 shoulders using this method. And that is what I'm gonna lock in for today. So the Coles Note version here is we're just gonna get from Amazon, your local grill store, a pellet tube smoker, add a couple of pellets, light them up, blow out your fire so you get some smoke, and then put in your deflector plate so there's no direct heat coming up on the raw seasoned pork. And anywhere from 90 minutes to 2 hours has been the right window. So I'm gonna go for about 90 minutes just because on this cook, I'm gonna have to juggle a lot of other things between the 12 roasts on the offset as well as the 8 roasts that I'll be doing on my 2 Kamado Joes, but 90 minutes is plenty of time. Once we're done with the cold smoke, we can remove the roast, set them aside, and we have nice clean Joes to start adding some smoking wood. Like I share in my smoking wood guide, which if you haven't seen that, goes into things like tests that prove why you shouldn't soak your wood, the differences in wood humidity between kiln dried and non-kiln dried, and most importantly, what actually works best in a Kamado style grill. That's why I developed it. But one of the pages in there includes sort of how to stage your smoke. If I compare doing my offset cook, I might interact with that fire 15 to 30 times throughout the day. So if my wood is a little bit wet and giving me bad smoke, I can place it on top of the firebox, dry it out, and then make sure I'm getting nice clean combustion. These are just one of many things that offset smokers and people using them have the ability to do to make adjustments for the entire cook. In a Kamado style grill, what we throw in there at the beginning for the most part is our one and only opportunity to significantly impact the end result. And sure, we've come up with a couple things when I developed a few years ago the ash drawer hack for being able to load in ash, and I've been getting even better results lately using the Kick Ash can. The Kick Ash can solves a couple things for me. Not only is it easier, as you would expect, for cleaning out the ash and getting everything, and you don't have any ash accumulating behind the stock wings, it also gives us way more volume. If I show you using pellets to simulate a completely full ash drawer versus the amount of volume that that takes up in something like the Kick Ash can, you can see that we are not going to run into any airflow restrictions. And more importantly for me, I'm not going to have so much ash starting to smother the wood chips and the chunks that I place in there. That is one of the downsides of using the ash drawer, is sometimes it just funnels in so much ash that it smothers out whatever chips, chunks, or pellets that we are trying to burn, and that can become a bit of a headache. Those problems go away with the Kick Ash can. So for my couple stages of smoke, I'm gonna place 2 chunks of cherry wood in my Kick Ash can. Then I'm gonna drop in my Kick Ash basket and add another 4 chunks of cherry. This is a Harry Sue pro tip, works amazing in Kamados, and I've been using it for years and sharing that on the channel. Cover that up with some fresh Fogo in each of our 2 grills. That's our family's favorite charcoal for smoke. And then after I use my grill blazer grill gun and get a nice hot fire in each of our 2 Kamados, I'm gonna sneak in 1 extra piece of cherry wood. So if you think about the smoke that's hitting our food, the piece of cherry that we add right away is gonna burn cleanly because our bottom vent is all the way open, our top vent is all the way open, the couple 100 pounds of ceramic is cool, our deflectors are cool, and the pork shoulders that we're adding are cool. So we're gonna be able to get away with no bad smoke, no creosote, and 100% open vents and take advantage of some of the smoke from that first piece. So if we break it down into stages, our first smoke is going to be the cold smoke with pellets. That's getting some smoke directly on our pork shoulders. The second smoke, transitioning into hot smoke, is going to be that piece of wood that we add right on top of the fire. It won't last for a long time, not for a long time, but here for a good time. That piece of wood is going to be the next stage of smoke. And then as it burns down and the fire starts to activate the pieces underneath of the charcoal basket, they will smolder and sort of come up through the charcoal filter, if you will, purifies that and give us some smoke that will last the next couple hours. And after a couple hour mark, when the wood on top is gone and the wood on the bottom is gone, but now some of those hot coals and embers are falling through our Kick Ash basket into our can, they will start to ignite and burn the pieces of wood that are sitting in our Kick Ash can. Answering a question I get all the time, by the way, the can is not compatible with the ash drawer. So this replaces 100% the ash drawer as it sits up for an air gap. This is to make sure that it doesn't expand, contract, and put pressure on our ceramic components and potentially cause them to crack. But just like with the Dojo, for example, where you've got your deflector plates and a pizza stone, we want an air gap, which acts almost as a air insulation. This insulates the can and it makes it combust even better. So for my purposes, a little bit trickier to toss in a piece of wood for smoking, but even better in terms of it combusting and giving us supplemental smoke for the entirety of the cook. So now that we've got our pork shoulders on and actually cooking, I've installed 2 Meter Pro XLs in each grill just to keep a general eye on things and make sure that my temperatures are running around 300, 310 degrees. I want to go for a hotter and faster cook in each of these 2 grills and make sure that one's not getting an unfair advantage over the other. I'm also going to keep things simple with the spritz. I've got a mixture of 50% apple cider vinegar and 50% water, and I will start spraying once the bark sets. So unlike maybe earlier videos where I mentioned every hour, every 2 hours, that's a little bit too much. We've got 4 roasts, which by definition are more humid, and there's going to be a lot more moisture inside of our Kamado grill just from the fact we're filling them up with meat, so we're not going to need as much spray. I want to save the spray until things start to dry out, somewhere in the 3 to 4 hour mark, and then depending on how they look, I'll come back sort of on a 90-minute to 2 hour interval just to keep things in check. Once our bark is set, I'm going to move to a full foil wrap. You have a couple choices here. You can do a foil boat, and so somewhere around 165 degrees is a good opportunity to go for the foil boat. The pro of this is going to retain some of the rendered fat in the bottom, and it will actually be a bit of a sinking boat, if you will, and allow the top bark to continue to develop. The downside of this is going to wash off all the seasoning and all the bark at the bottom of our roast that we spent all those first 3 stages of smoke building up. You could go for something like butcher paper and wrap in butcher paper. This is something I do in my offset all the time. Kamados under almost all setups don't have enough convection airflow, save for perhaps my Dojo setup, which I've recorded with an aeronometer 4 times more air moving out the front compared to the SloRoller setup. But most setups don't move enough air that butcher paper I find to be a good idea inside of a Kamado grill. So that really leaves the last option for the full foil wrap. The benefit though of double indirect is it cooks quicker, we burn through more fuel, we get more convection airflow, and we don't burn the bottom. So I'm going to leave these naked until the bark is fully set, somewhere in around the 180, 185 degree Fahrenheit range, at which point I'll wrap them in foil. So I'll still be able to save some of that rendered out pork fat, but I'm going to get bark 360 degrees panoramic all the way around and make sure I don't lose any of my seasoning. Okay, our pork butts are out of the rest and they look fantastic. But just as I could tell during the cook, my eye can spot a difference between these 2. So I've labeled them on the front so you will know, but I'm not going to give Sarah a heads up which of these roasts came off of which of these grills. In fact, let me go grab her. We'll do a bit of a blind taste test, see if she can spot what I'm seeing without knowing the background story in terms of which one came from which grill, and more importantly, she can taste the difference. Be right back. Welcome.
Thank you. Oh, these look good.
You hungry?
Yeah, I am.
We have pork and pork. You can have anything you like so long as it's pork.
Great.
All right, so I'm going to get to work shredding these up. And I'm not going to give you any clues, but I wanted you to see them before I shred them.
Yeah.
Just so you can lock that in the memory bank. But what we're really going for, the only thing I think that ultimately matters is taste.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, so I will take everyone fast forward while I glove up and get shredding.
Okay.
Okay, the wasps are just as interested in our pork as we are, but we've got these shredded up. They both hold beautifully.
Yeah, they did.
Why don't you dive in and tell us what you think?
Okay. Let's
Which one are we starting on?
I'll start on this one, closest to me.
All right.
Get some bark too.
I was going to say cheers, but you're hungry, as you said.
I am hungry. I can do another one.
3, 2, 1.
Cheers.
Cheers.
That one's good. Tender.
Okay.
Yep. I'm going to try the other one.
Try the next one.
A little bit of bark again. Though I will say, when you showed them both to me, I was like, oh, I want the bark off this one on the right.
Oh, Kimasabi is learning. Good job. Curious what you think.
Okay, one more little.
Yeah? Well, if you're doing it, might as well join you. Don't want you to be alone. Big difference, little difference, no difference. What do you think?
Okay.
What are we working with?
Oh, little difference.
Little difference.
Not big difference.
Okay.
They're delicious. Even the tenderness, they're tender. It's good. I would say the biggest difference to me is the pieces with the bark.
Right.
Like this one, just the flavor, the texture. Yeah, it was just better than that one. Not a ton, like not huge, but a little difference.
So I'll give you a clue. These were both cooked on a red grill. Does that help? No? Okay, so what I was, now that you've done the taste test, I'll tell you what we're after.
Okay.
So one of these is cooked on Kamado Joe's original, oldest grill that I have upgraded using my double indirect setup with a pizza stone. And the other one is using the SloRoller accessory, which was a huge pull for me watching from the other side as this came out, as it circulates smoke 20 times better throughout the grill is the claim. So with that knowledge now, which one do you think has the benefit of the SloRoller accessory versus which one do you think is the oldest?
So the SloRoller circulates the smoke more?
Yeah, so the,
that's what it's supposed to do.
Yes, exactly.
So I would think that maybe it's that one because the flavor, like it even seemed a little smokier, and that was really good on the pulled pork. It wasn't huge, like I said, similar, but I would assume that one's the SloRoller.
So I agree with you on 2 out of 3 things.
Shoot.
So I agree. I agree. They're both like inside identical.
Okay.
On the inside.
Yes.
I agree. The bark is the best.
Yeah.
On this one.
Yeah.
This is the oldest Kamado Joe. This is the SloRoller.
Really?
Yes.
That's so interesting. Okay, I would never guess that. That's funny, yeah.
Well, thanks so much for joining for a blind taste test. I'll go back inside and share a couple other key insights that I learned. More importantly, after the cook, when I shut things down, there were some differences inside of our 2 grills. So the last thing that I found really interesting is when the pork shoulders were just finished, including double indirect using the pizza stone on the Series 1. I got them off and started to rest them in the oven for the overnight hold, but the pork shoulders that I had on my offset needed a little bit of extra time. So just to speed them up so it wasn't too late into the evening, my game plan was to transfer the 12 roasts, 6 and 6, and move them to my 2 Kamados, which were up to temperature, 300 degrees, holding nice and steady, and have that be a little bit of a faster way to finish them now that they were wrapped in foil. It wouldn't impact them flavor-wise at all, since they've enjoyed a smoke bath using real wood fire all day, but once they're wrapped in foil, as Harry Sue has done on his channel, he sometimes finishes things in the oven. Heat is heat, and this is a faster and less expensive way of getting the heat that I need to finish them off versus continuing to throw premium oak splits that are prepared for flavor in my offset. But this is where the but came in. Once I transferred them all over, I started to notice my temperatures dropping fairly quickly on my Big Joe Series 1, and at which point that means either airflow or fuel. And as suspected, when I removed everything, we're out of gas. So we had enough to cook our pork shoulders. We have enough, as I've done with the briskets, but just barely. The tank was on empty, coasting with fumes. There wasn't enough energy to finish cooking my offset pork shoulder. So I had to pull everything out, add a little bit more Fogo, and then bring that back up to temperature to get it to finish. I didn't run into any issue on my Big Joe Series 3 with the exact same charcoal, the exact same amount of charcoal. It didn't burn through as much, and so there was an efficiency difference. And as I always use, fuel is flavor. If we are burning more wood, cleaner wood, we are going to notice that, and that is what I absolutely saw in the bark. So when you saw them cooking, you saw them side by side, even Sarah was able to pick up on that. I was able to get a better bark using a pizza stone versus the SloRoller with his advantages on the marketing claim of moving air 20 times. I actually have a university, one of the nation's top engineering firms, doing CFD testing to help give us more resources on that. If we were, for example, shopping for a car and they say it goes 0 to 60 in 4 seconds, that's a great claim, but there are lots of independent magazines that would validate that, whether that's true or not. When it comes to grilling and smoking, there's a lack of these independent tests, which is why I partnered with this university to do that. So stay tuned for more to come in the future. But until we have their results, I have my results. And as you saw, the proof is in the pulled pork today. The bark looked better, it tasted better, and in the side-by-side comparison, if we had to choose one, both Sarah and I would go for Series 1 using the pizza stone. So not only is this less expensive, if you're in the camp saying, I don't have a SloRoller and I feel left out and I only have a little bit under $100, I would feel no shame buying the pizza stone because this is going to give you, as we saw today, the ability to create comparable, equally great results on your Kamado style grill. And you could also take advantage of one of my favorite things to do in a Kamado, which is a pizza oven. If you happen to already own the SloRoller, there's still a bunch of versatility and usability with that. I get very consistent temperatures side to side. A word of warning though, earlier in the year, the temperature was lowered from 500 degrees Fahrenheit, where I've got some of my best results, to 300 degrees Fahrenheit. So now, sticking within the confines of not voiding my warranty and exceeding the 300 degrees Fahrenheit, this is where the benefits that I got used to seeing become a little bit suppressed in terms of being as incremental. This is just a volume of, again, how much air is moving through there and the benefit that you get of the convection airflow pattern. My opinion on it is we don't see as many of those benefits sub 300 as you do over 300, where it starts to really flex some of its engineering and design prowess. That's it for today, though. I hope you enjoyed this head-to-head. If you got any questions about today's test, the results, or you just want to ask a question real time, be sure to check out my member section where I go live once a month down below. That's it for today. I'm James from Cooking at Barbecue signing off. Remember, don't be afraid to fire it up.